So first thing we'll need to learn is what are exactly the components. Let's try to generate a component and see what exactly are components and what are the things they do. So let's get back to our terminal. And as this terminal is being preoccupied by the ng-serve, we will need to open a new terminal in the same folder. Let me zoom in. Now we'll use ng generate component and then the name of the component. Let's say the name of the component is first, only first. Now hit enter. As you can see in the terminal, there are the four files which says created. Then there's a source and there's a path to that file. There are four such file and there's one uh, element which is getting updated and there's a location of that file. Now let's see in our text editor what are these new files and what is inside these files. Let's minimize this and let's get back to our code editor. As we can see, there is a new folder here inside our app. Let's close these files, which is in green. That's why we could recognize them as green stands for new one. So there is this first folder which is being generated. And as we can see in our terminal, it says the first folder, the four files are inside the first folder, which are inside source then app. So we are inside the source then app, then there's this first folder. Now let's click on this first folder. We see there are four files as they are all green, which means they are being created. And here in the terminal, we can see there are these four files. The first one is first.component.css. It is the first file. Similarly, the HTML, the component.spec.ts, and the last component.ts. So these are the four files. And there is one file which is getting updated, which means there is some text being inserted inside that. Let's look at that. And it is in the source app and then the app module.ts file. As it is yellow, yellow means it has been updated. So this is that file which we are saying. And so these are the four files and one file which were getting updated. Now let's look into what is inside this first component.html. So within this first component.html, we have a p element which says first works. So note that even inside this component, we don't have the full HTML page. We just have the the content which should go inside the body of the main page. And let's look at this first component.ts file also. So we have, if you see, we have something here as a selector, which is app first. Then we have a template URL, which gives the location of this HTML file only. And we have a style URL, which gives the first.component.cs location inside a list. So this refers to something as this is the file which is telling the Angular that this is the template URL. This is where the HTML is for this component, and this is where the CSS part is for this particular component. And so this is the this first component.ts file should be the one which handles all the JavaScript of this page. So this is similar to what we were actually seeing first. Uh, where we had app.component.html, app.component.css, and app.component.ts stands for TypeScript. So that is something which is parent component, and this first is something like a root component, which is inside because the folder is inside that app folder. So let's try to do the same thing, and let's use this app selector and try to understand what exactly is this app selector. Uh, we copy this app selector, as we know that we can use this app selector and like can convert it into an HTML tag and can use it inside that HTML to generate the page. So we'll go inside this app.component.html where we earlier wrote the hello world. Now, after that hello world, let's write this app first. And as the HTML ending tag was automatically generated, let's save this file. Let's get back to our main page, and we see the first work is getting printed here. So uh, we are doing the same thing again. We have made this element, the HTML element, a custom HTML element, which is actually a component only. And with that component, we have defined what it should show and what are the style and what are the logic inside these three files, which are inside the first folder. Now let's try to change this first work HTML element and say this is our first component. Let's save this and then get back to our website, and we see this is our first component getting printed here. So this is what a component is, and similarly we generate the whole website using these small components. So it's easy to change a particular component and reuse each component as we did in this HTML file. We just need to add this app component and we can hide this. We can comment this to hide the whole component. So we need not to worry, look into a lot of different files to comment out a particular section. So this is how the component works. Let's get back to our side. So the first command which we ran to generate our component was ng generate component, then the name of that component we use first here. And these are the code which was already written in the HTML in the first component .ts file. So you can also use a shortcut. If you don't want to type this whole command, you can use ng g for generate, c for component, then the component name. And they were the four files, and these and every file we studied that they are linked to the component.ts file, which is where the Angular sees exactly where are the HTML file and where are the CSS file, and it sees the logic inside that component.ts file. Let's look at some examples of components in Angular. If we look onto this website, we can see that there is one card, and these are two exactly same cards. But earlier, while our approach in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, we need to copy paste the whole element which was creating this particular card. We need to copy paste it 3 times. Uh, then it would have made us this page. Now, if we want to do something similar with the help of components, we can do that by we can just copy paste this app first 3 times here. And when we go back to our page, we see our these three first component getting printed 3 times, although we have made this component only once. So we need not to actually write it again and again. We just make it once and can use it wherever we want and how many times we want.